Decoding countdown is inside.
Have you ever been on a roller coaster and heard noises like this? Maybe you felt like your restraint was unlocked. Maybe you felt like the structure was going to collapse beneath you. Whether or not you felt either of these things, I can assure you that none of them happen. And barely any of them have ever happened before. That final one about a structure collapsing beneath you, that is literally in the history of all roller coasters, whether it's first world, second world, any sort of country, anything, that has never happened. Because in order for that to happen, you need to be very stupid in order to design a structure to do that. But anyway, you probably clicked on this video for one of a few reasons. You're either just doing this to check my information because you're a fellow coaster enthusiast that wants to make sure that all information is correctly spread. I know how it feels. You're looking at a bunch of roller coaster videos right now, and my video just so happened to pop up, and the GP or a bunch of people making clickbait videos have made a bunch of videos questioning you about the safety of roller coasters, and now you've all of a sudden wanted to make sure that roller coasters are safe, or something else like that, because pretty much everything can fall under one of those two categories. But yeah, I'm making this video because people need to know about roller coaster safety, because it's something that people don't really ever give credit to, because roller coasters are one of the safest things you can ever do in your life. So, yeah, basically, you have no reason to be worried, but I'm not just going to say that, I'm actually going to show you it. So, without further ado, let's get started. One of the main things people worry about when they're getting on a roller coaster is if they'll actually stay in the ride. I've always heard people say on a ride like Tatsu at Six Flags Magic Mountain, where they will say stuff like, "Oh, this would be a terrible time for the restraint to unlock." And to that, I just want to say, no. The restraint physically cannot unlock during your ride. Unless something genuinely, astronomically rare happens, then your restraint is not going to unlock. Most restraints either go by a hydraulic system or a ratcheting system, whether the restraint will be kept in by hydraulic pressure from hydraulic fluid, or by physical, actual gears that lock in place. The way you can tell which restraint is which is from the noticeable clicking sound or not. Now, of course, neither of these are less safe than the other, both are perfectly fine, which is why some manufacturers even flip-flop between the two. I know this because B&M uses both ratcheting restraints and hydraulic restraints, which I don't really get. Like, come on, B&M, if you're gonna use one, just stick with it. There's a very good video about restraints by CoasterBot. I will link that in the description along with probably a bunch of other videos, because God knows I'm not going to explain all this in this video. But yeah, he has a pretty good explanation on roller coaster restraints. But just know that your restraint will not come undone Final Destination 3 style, okay? Because not only does the hydraulic fluid not just casually leak out like that, or the springs in the ratcheting system don't just come undone, but often a restraint needs a battery pack to be undone. Most modern day roller coasters will genuinely need some sort of battery pack or some sort of device to have the restraints be undone, and unless you have a battery pack on the ride and you connect it with your very, very, very long arms to the bottom of the train, then you're not going to be able to do that, are you now? The next thing I want to talk about is cars of coasters just kind of coming off the track. And yes, I do know about the El Toro stuff with it kind of derailing in 2021, but very obviously that was because it was 2021. I think we all know what happened just a year prior when, the maintenance people couldn't really do the best at maintenance, so, that kind of happened. And yes, the Chimera accident in 2019, and so on and so forth. But these accidents where roller coasters derail, it never happens fully. And if it does happen fully, then it's because of genuinely, the worst maintenance on the park's part, and probably it's also in a third world country that you'll have a low likelihood of visiting. I take that back, but you'll have a low likelihood of visiting parks in this area because all you have to do is just look at a park where one of these roller coasters is located in to kind of think, yeah, no. But now it's time to actually prove this to you. Roller coasters run on a set of 3 wheels. Road wheels, which are the ones at the top, side friction wheels, which are the one on the side, and upstop wheels, which are the ones at the bottom. The only time this is different is when the side friction wheels and the upstop wheels are combined. This pretty much only happens on Vecoma's Kiddie coasters, and when the upstop wheels are replaced with upstop pads. This only happens, to my knowledge, on Arrow's old mine train coasters, an example being the Cedar Creek Mine Ride and Gold Rusher. These rides have upstop pads, not upstop wheels, because there's not that much negative G-forces, so they don't really need that much. Fun fact, Magnum XL200 at Cedar Point, a ride known for its relentless airtime, opened with upstop pads, but after there was an immense spark show coming from those upstop pads at the bottom of the train, they decided, yeah, let's just use upstop wheels instead. And the only way a roller coaster could come off the track with this is if there's some sort of problem with any of the wheels. Most likely, the one that would cause the most damage would be the side friction wheels, because without those, the second it went around a curve, it would kind of, stop being on that curve. Or a problem with the track in the case of El Toro's incident, where the track was too wide, but that's only something that can happen with wooden coasters, and even then, it's still pretty rare. I know this one wasn't as reassuring as the last part, but trust me when I say that there's no chance of this happening, okay? If you get in an accident like this, then consider yourself extremely unlucky. The next thing I want to mention is roller coaster breakdowns and roller coaster testing. I'm combining these two into one because I want longer segments, okay? So, roller coaster breakdowns happen when the roller coaster detects a problem. Basically, what usually happens is something will go wrong, or the roller coaster senses that something is about to go wrong, and it will automatically e-stop the ride. Now, let me specify. The ride can only e-stop in a place where the train speed is controlled. It cannot stop in anywhere during the normal layout. It can only stop on a lift hill, a launch, the station, the brake run, the transfer area, basically anywhere where there's tire drives, brakes, etc., etc. And there is also a very nice thing called block zones that I'll get into later. And, of course, there's also the things of, well, why do they sense a problem? Now, of course, if they do sense a problem, then that means the ride is working perfectly fine. If it didn't detect a problem, that would actually be very bad. Obviously, if a ride doesn't detect a problem all day, that doesn't mean it's doing bad. But often, some rides will actually be programmed to be too safe. A good example of this is the intimate hydraulic launch coasters, a good notable example being Top Thrill Dragster. Rest in peace. But there are also a bunch of other intimate accelerators that have the same thing. Basically, what will happen is, you know how on intimate accelerator coasters, they have all of these brake fins lined up on the launch. Well, If one of those brake fins does not line up correctly, one of them out of like, how many, like 400, then the ride will shut itself down. And from what I've heard, it takes like 30 minutes for it to start back up. So, yeah, sometimes rides being too safe are also a big problem, because it makes it so it's almost impossible to get on them. The ride manufacturer Intamin is a big person of this. They often either have rides that break down a bunch because they're too safe, or break down a bunch because the rides are prototypes and the ride keeps on detecting a problem, even if that problem isn't actually a real problem, so they end up having to fix it every single day. And that's also just another thing where if you hear the term prototype ride, don't worry about it. All it means is that ride is probably going to break down a bunch. I know that, with freaking Tidal Twister being closed for 2 goddamn years. Okay, I take that sentence back, mainly because honestly, I don't think anyone cares if Tidal Twister was closed for 2 years, but still. And then, one thing that not many people know about, surprisingly, is roller coaster testing. Every single morning, all the roller coasters at any park, at least in first world countries, will have at least like a good 15-20 test runs, and I bet I'm still underestimating it there. They will often have to test the block zones, which I will once again get into later because I want its own segment for that. They will test their block zones, they will test to make sure all the trains are working nicely, they will test to make sure all the systems are working, blah 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 blah, all that stuff. All before the park starts opening. And if you've ever been to a park right before opening, and you've been waiting for a ride to open up for the day, and you've seen a train going around the layout with one rider in it, that's a test rider. Basically, they send someone around the layout holding a clipboard of some sort if they're able to, and they basically make sure that the entire ride is working properly and there's no faults. And often that will end up working and the ride will open for the day. Now, of course, rides do also test before they open, period. For example, Wonder Woman Flight of Courage, a ride at Six Flags Magic Mountain that I just so happened to catch testing, did in fact have a lot of test runs before its opening on July 16th, 2022. I caught its second ever test run, and it seemed like it was running pretty well. And often when you see these test runs, you will see it with water dummies in it and other stuff like that. Basically, all they're doing is they're making sure that everything is working properly. They will use the testing time to not only work out any kinks that they need to work out physically or metaphorically in the track, but also kinks in the system, stuff like that, to make sure it's all ready for opening, and other things like that. So yeah, roller coasters test a bunch before they open to the public at all, and before they open to the public for that day. Now, it's time for the moment that you probably haven't been waiting for, but if you're a coaster enthusiast, you've definitely been waiting for. It's time to talk about the block zones. Now, of course, I probably should tell you what a block zone is.
For those of you who are familiar, a block zone is a section of ride that only one train may occupy. At the end of a block zone, it's meant to stop a train because the block zone is still occupied. This is the safety system that prevents roller coaster trains from colliding in with one another.
So there, now that you know what a block zone is, let's explain how they help the safety of roller coasters. If you couldn't tell by that definition there, I probably explained the fact that, these basically split up rides into various different sections. And if a section of a ride is occupied, then it will automatically stop the train that's coming up to a block section. Here's a pretty good example using Manta at SeaWorld San Diego. When the first train leaves the station, the second train occupies the station as it was previously in the unload station. That first train goes into the pre-launch section, and then it launches out of the tunnel, clearing the launch section block zone. Then the second train dispatches out of the station and goes into the launch section block zone. The first train clears the mid-course, as it would be in Manta's case, because it's technically a second launch, but it's basically just a mid-course. It goes through the second launch, clearing this section of the ride for the second train. The second train launches through the launch, and the first train enters the brake run, and goes through the brake run, clearing the brake run block, allowing the second train to clear the second launch and go into the second half of the ride, and then the first train goes through the unload station, and then finally the station, allowing for the process to then repeat. This would actually be a lot simpler if I had done it with 3 trains, but it's a lot easier for me to create with it being only 2 trains, so I don't know what you want from me. So basically, to sum that up, it's basically just to keep trains from crashing into each other. So if you ever notice that, wow, this ride is running a lot of trains, how do they not crash into each other? Well, that's why. It's because of the wonderful thing that is block zones. Now I'm going to talk about roller coaster sounds. Yeah, this is finally addressing that clip at the beginning of the video that I just for some reason never brought up after that. So yeah, let's start with that. The first thing I want to bring up is the sound a lift hill makes. Now, the lift hill is made so that way it can hold a chain, which is the thing that is actually moving the train upwards, making it look like it's defying gravity, because it is, and some notches that at first may look pointless and weird at first, but now that you are watching this video, I'm going to explain why. Those notches are because at the bottom of roller coaster trains, there are these little things that connect with these little teeth and end up making this clicking noise. That clicking noise is because they're sort of locking and unlocking into these teeth, making it so that if the lift hill stops, the train won't go careening backwards, and instead it will just kind of stop in place. So if you've ever been on a lift hill stop, which if you have, you are very lucky. I really want that experience. You may have noticed that the train will sort of slide backward like an inch or two. That's because it was most likely caught between 2 notches, and it had to slide backwards into one of these 2 notches in order to be able to, stop properly. Next are the sounds that appear when roller coasters sort of enter, exit stations, and go through launches and stuff like that. First of all, you'll probably hear these noises that sound like air releasing. Or you'll hear sounds that sound like something powering up, like an engine of some sort. Or something else like that. Well, those releasing noises are not coming from the train, but they're coming from the track. One thing I want to specify, trains do not have engines. Even if it's a powered coaster, I think there may have been a few roller coasters where the engine is actually in the train, but even with powered coasters, the thing that's powering the train is always on the track. Because where are you going to put an engine in this thing? Even if you can kind of fit one in certain areas, it would still be way too small to be able to power a roller coaster through some of these elements. So with that logic, you can pretty much tell that roller coaster trains, when there's nothing on the track, it's propelled by gravity. But of course, what if there is something on the track? Well, this will often be a tire drive, a brake, an LSM, an LIM, of hydraulic launch, and a bunch of other stuff that I really can't be bothered to name. I'll go over the main ones that I named. Brakes are just as they seem. There are 2 types of brakes, friction brakes and magnetic brakes. Just like the restraint system, neither of these are less safe than the other. They're both equally safe, but you'll probably notice that on most roller coasters, they'll have a very long line of magnetic brakes and then a few friction brakes at the end. This is because of block zones! Yay, we're going back to this. Block zones, when a train needs to stop in a section, it will kind of very slowly crawl, because when the brakes release, they don't want the train to just sit there, and half the time they can't even add tire drives because they want to make sure that the train can stop. So all mid-course brake runs will be slightly angled downwards, so that way the train can roll forward. And when this happens and a lift stop occurs, the train will start ever so slightly moving out of the magnetic brakes, and that's why their friction brakes always at the end of mid-course brake runs. It's because those friction brakes actually have the power to stop the train, not the magnetic brakes. They can only slow a train down. Well, that's a very, 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 very confusing discussion for the GP there. Now that that's over, I'm going to explain LSMs and LIMs. LSMs and LIMs are the ones that often make this kind of powering up noise.
that noise is because of magnets. LSM stands for linear synchronous motors, and LIM stands for linear induction motors. Both of these are launches that are powered by magnets. LIMs are older than LSMs, but LSMs are usually the more reliable version of LIMs, and they take less power. Now, LIMs are still sometimes used on a few roller coasters, mainly ones by Intamin and Premier Rides, but both are no longer seen in modern day, and both of these manufacturers now use LSMs. Other manufacturers like RMC, B&M, Mock Rides, and so on and so forth all use LSMs and have always used LSMs.
Well, yeah, I know Hulk has a tire drive launch, but don't talk about that one.
And that sound that you hear about the roller coaster powering up is the sound of electromagnets turning on as the train slowly moves forward, because there's a very complicated explanation about how LSMs and LIMs work. Once again, I'll link another video in the description about LSMs and LIMs. Basically, a magnetic field moves with the magnetic field created by some launch fins of the train, and the magnetic field moves with the magnetic field on the train to make it speed up. That was very confusing, but watch the video in the description and maybe it'll clear things up for you. There are also tire drives and tire drive launches. These sound exactly as they are. Basically, tire drives that move a train, and for launch's case, tire drives that accelerate a train very quickly. As I said before, there are tire drives on the Incredible Hulk coaster at Universal Islands of Adventure, but you'll most likely only find tire drives in areas like a station, a show scene, a mid-course, blah 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 blah, and maybe even a brake run if you're in the case of Steel Vengeance and you kind of need that. These grip on two little fins at the bottom of the train and make them move forwards, as you probably thought. And then, of course, there are hydraulic launches. Hydraulic launches, oh, and also air compressed launches, but these basically go off the same system but replace hydraulic fluid with air. Hydraulic launches basically used a bunch of compressed hydraulic fluid to make a catch car, basically a thing at the bottom of the train that catches a little shoe that then moves the train forward to accelerate at a very quick speed. In most cases, hydraulic launches are stronger than LSM launches because instead of using magnets, you're using very compressed hydraulic fluid and a physical thing that can move very quickly, unlike magnets which have to kind of power up gradually. Now, this does not mean LSM launches can't be forceful. I have actually experienced a few LSM launches that have been very forceful, some examples being Maverick at Cedar Point, Full Throttle at Six Flags Magic Mountain, and so on. Now, hydraulic launches, I've only experienced one of those, but good lord, that was powerful. That being Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm. I would have experienced Dragster's launch, but, well, we all know what happened to Dragster. So, yeah, unfortunately not. But I did experience Accelerator at Knott's Berry Farm's launch, which is in a questionable position. And I'm glad I experienced it, because good lord, hydraulic launches are something that everyone needs to experience because of how freaking powerful they are. It's the only launch where I grayed out, not because of any forces vertically or laterally or, vertically. It's only because of forward G-forces, and the blood was just going out of my eyes. It was really fun, and now that I say blood going out of my eyes, that's probably created a bad image in your head. I shouldn't have said that. But yeah, basically, hydraulic fluid, catch car, go boom. And it's the same thing for air compressed launches, except it's air instead of hydraulic fluid. And from what I know, because I've not experienced an air compressed launch yet, but I hopefully should in the future, air compressed launches go nearly twice as powerful as hydraulic launches, and the world's fastest accelerating coaster, Dodonpa at Fuji-Q Highland in Japan, which is, to my knowledge, still closed, I don't actually know, has the world's strongest launch, and it is a air compressed launch, which you go from 0 to 111 miles an hour in a staggering 1.3 seconds. No, I'm not joking. Look at a POV. Those are sort of the major roller coaster sounds, and also, yeah, if you're wondering, hydraulic launches, tire drive launches, and air compressed launches all make sounds. They're all pretty loud. Well, not tire drive launches, but air compressed launches, to my knowledge, are very loud. Hydraulic launches make a very satisfying...
And in general, roller coaster sounds, if you hear them, they're nothing to worry about. Even if it does sound like something is breaking, that's mainly because it's not. It's just something that sounds like it is. Anyway, that is almost everything I have to cover here. I will probably make a follow-up video to this because this video is starting to get a tad bit long for my liking, and I want to make a follow-up video for this about how to get over your fear of roller coasters, as I think you should watch this one first so you know that, and then now that you know this information, use this to get over your fear of roller coasters, as I am someone who went through that exact same thing, and look at where I ended up. So, yeah, that will pretty much be it for this video. If you want me to make a part 2, just ask in the comments, and I'm still going to make that follow-up video, but I mean a part 2 to this one explaining more about roller coaster safety, because there is more, and yeah, that'll be it. So, hope you liked the video, subscribe if you haven't yet, if you're all subscribed, leave a like, and I was with the Coast Critic, you're the viewer, and I'll see you in the future. Goodbye.